My name is Preston Mitchell, and we are on the bluff spur of Black Mountain, just on the Virginia side of the border.
Yeah, my name is Lamont Vaughn, and I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee. We're up at the start of it all. Dan Richmond's these are the burial sites that we have here, and this is kind of like the start of it all for my family. I'm the great-grandson of Dora Howard, and that's Jackson Richmond's daughter, first daughter. My people, my grandmother and my great-grandmother came through Greensville and Morristown, Tennessee. And my granddad and my grandmom, they went to Swift College, and so that's about as much as I know. But they told me that as I was growing up. My mom, who's 97 years old, she said she had been up here as a small child. But sitting here, just I was telling my son-in-law, it just the feeling that you get, that you kind of back where it kind of started from, in a sense. And you know, I'm blessed to be able to come up here and see it. My wife is she's an avid ancestry person, going back and searching the ancestry of both sides of the family, and she really kind of started this whole thing off, other than what I just received as a kid. And then Preston carried it even further than that, you know. So I'm really appreciative of what he's done. He's done a remarkable job for me.
The story of Dan Richmond is found in a couple of history books. The first history of Wise County, that was written in 1938. Charles Johnson talked about going to Dan Richmond's home and feasting on, you know, a huge spread, and getting a feather bed to sleep on. He also appears in Marie Fraser Day, who wrote the book Kingdom Come, Fact or Fantasy, and she tells the story, as told to her mother, of Dan Richmond coming across the mountain in planting season with a big red horse who helped with the plowing, and how he would lead church services there at the Free Will Baptist Church there, which is, I think, rather striking. The black man leading an all-white church in eastern Kentucky. Those are the actual two incidents where he is mentioned in history, but he's mentioned in folklore, to the point that a storyteller named Harvey Sturgill, he told a story at Jonesboro Storytelling about Dan, and that piqued my interest about how much of an oral tale told, you know, throughout was real history, and which was fact or fiction. I thought it remarkable that a freedman that soon after the Civil War could come up here and make a community. Dan Richmond was the leader of this place. His name, he was not literate. His mark appears on 7 death certificates of, I imagine, 7 of these people buried here. He was the leader, and he must have been a lot smarter than me, and certainly more hardworking to make a living up here on this mountain. By my count, I think maybe as many as 46 people lived up here and made a living. And not only that, but when the time came, when the coal people came down and started buying mineral rights and buying up land, Dan was able to negotiate and sell what he had acquired, the 985 acres in Virginia and Kentucky. And I think it speaks about generational wealth that he was able to create for his family, and people like, like my friend Lamont Vaughn.
I'm just moved by it, you know, just know that what Dan Richmond had achieved, and I'm just wild by it, you know. During that time period, you didn't expect something like that to happen, you know, and then for him to accumulate that much land, and then move on, and then all his offsprings are expected to do something well, and it seems like, from what I've gathered from Preston, they have, you know, they have achieved, and so I think he would be satisfied. I'm just pleased to be amongst this, even though I don't know the names on on the markers. It's just, I'm just moved by, my people, you know.
Today, thanks to several people, Amy Clark Spann, who turned me on to Dr. Rhett Herman from Radford University with his ground penetrating radar machine, has meticulously laid out a grid to identify, hopefully, how many graves we're talking about. There's headstones, footstones that it's hard to match up how many there are, but hopefully this machine will give us a better picture of that. And I need to mention my former colleague, Brian McKnight, Center for Appalachian Studies, who has helped fund this and generate interest. Amy and Brian and Jenny Turman, who's the public historian at UVA-Wise. So they've been very supportive, and I'm very appreciative because I'm just a retired guy.
My name is Rhett Herman. I'm a physics professor at Radford University. You know, to talk about the results of the ground penetrating radar, like all remote sensing things, you can't say 100% for sure that what we see is exactly what's under the ground. However, the results that I have do have some consistencies with this being a burial site, and the reflection signals that I receive from the GPR unit itself, whenever I process them, they are consistent with what I have seen from burials in the past. And there were really 4 characteristics that I saw with these reflections. I say reflections because the GPR unit has a transmitter and a receiver that we drag across the ground. The transmitter sends a 250 megahertz signal into the ground. It bounces off any differences in the subsurface. Those differences can be simply because of the change in the chemistry of the subsurface brought about by a burial, by clay, by roots, by gopher holes, or anything like that, or by subsurface water. But in order to have something that's consistent with burials, we look for these things to be not just isolated signals, but signals, reflections that show up in groupings, in certain orientations, at certain depths, and at certain lengths. I see reflections under the ground that have several characteristics. They start about a half meter or so down. This would be consistent with being the top of a caving in burial, or the top of the disturbance in the soil where somebody has been buried. It could be the top of where the soil chemistry has changed. It could be what's left of the crypt or the coffin in which they were buried. Maybe some materials from back then that they were buried in. They're linear in the sense that they are, well, if somebody's going to be buried, they're going to be buried laying down. And so that is consistent with what I've seen with burials in the past. They're also grouped in the sense that they are next to each other. It's not 100% definitive, but it's consistent with other cemeteries that I've seen in the past.
Special thanks to Preston. Same thing about my wife. I'm indebted to what she's done too. I get my hat off those 2 people, I'm real thankful and blessed to have them share what they've learned and share what they've found with me, and then we can pass it on to our cousins and my mom.